My voice clearly audible?
Hey, Prabhuji, it's audible.
नमः ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देवतामिने जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Last week I got a feeling that something has begun to sink in now, and there is a faint grasp of the thing. But before I start on chapter 4, I would like to remind all of you that we may not remember what we ate 4 days back. However, it did provide the nourishment to us. Similarly, in the case of transcendental knowledge, we may think that we don't recall much, we don't think we have been able to grasp much, but at the right time, this knowledge will help you, because the nourishment to the soul happens through the hearing of scriptures. So do not be disturbed in your mind that you are not able to comprehend and recall what all has been discussed. Let us quickly do a recap of what we did last week in chapter 3. The essence of chapter 3 was to understand the distinction between fruitive activities, which is called sakama karma, and nishkama karma, which means action without the desire for results. So within the nishkam karma, the main aspect that cropped up was the aspect of sacrifice, and that is what is called yajna. If you recall, I had talked about a staircase where at the bottom you have people who are very lazy, they don't work. Then on the first step, there are people who work, but they think they are the only doers. And then suppose they get a remuneration of 50 rupees and they buy an ice cream of that 50 rupees and they feel justified. So that's the first layer. Second layer. Then the third layer would be of people who recognize that parents gave us the body and teachers gave us the knowledge. And so therefore they acknowledge their contribution in the success of these people, in as in their own success. Then the fourth step was there, wherein people recognize the contribution which is given by sun and earth and ether and fire and air and all of these other entities. And then the topmost was where one recognizes that there is a singular reality, one supreme person who has made all of this possible. You call it divinity, you call it energy, you call it, the father of Jesus, or whatever you want to call it. So these five grades were there. And then we discussed about acknowledgement, which means being grateful, and reciprocating by I have earned 50 rupees and I'm giving 5 rupees back to you as my token of love. And we took the example of a son, who gets a pocket money of 100 rupees a month, but at the end of the year he buys a t-shirt to his dad for 1000 rupees, which means he could have utilized those 1000 rupees for himself, but he did not do that. He sacrificed his desire to please the father. The money belongs to the father, but still the sacrifice is counted, and that is what is called yajna. And then I elaborated on the main line of third chapter, which is tasmat sarvagatam brahman yagyam nitya pratishtita, that supreme reality perpetually resides in the acts of sacrifice. Many times I have told you that if you take a continuum, then on the one end is kripana, miserly people who want to enjoy the fruits of their action. And then on the other end of the continuum are the yogis who perform yajnas and they sacrifice everything into the sum total of everything. And the example given was, if you water the root of a tree, then automatically the twigs and the leaves, everybody gets nourishment. Similarly, if you satisfy the supreme person called Krishna, then the demigods, the energies, the living entities, everything animate or inanimate is satisfied. Otherwise, you have rin, you are in debt. Matra rin, pitra rin, guru rin, dev rin, all of those are there. But then you get u rin. U rin means you get free of that debt merely by propitiating or satisfying that supreme person. So that yajna was the main thing. And if you recall 3.30, Mai Sarvani Karmani, ultimately he doesn't even say just do work for the sake of working. He then categorically states Mai Sarvani, offer it to me. You do whatever, Mai Sarvani Karma, all your activities you offer to me. Sanyasina Dhyatma Chetasa. And then you be situated in that consciousness, that samadhi, Adhyatma Chetasa. Nirashir Nirmamo Bhutva. Don't aspire, don't own. Yuddhasva Vigata Jvara. Then keep doing your duty without lethargy. Why I gave a little elaborate synopsis today is because chapter 4 is an extension of chapter 3. Now we are beginning from chapter 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I apologize for such a fast recap because those of you who were not here last week may have found it, tough to comprehend. But those of you who were there, they would be able to recall that yes, this was all covered. And now chapter 4. Krishna begins this chapter with talking about the topic of this chapter is transcendental knowledge. And then he says, way back, Arjun, I gave this knowledge to Sun God, whose name is Vivasvana. And then he gave it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu gave it to Ikshvaku. And this way, through a successive disciplic succession, a chain of disciplic succession, this transcendental knowledge kept on reaching to its recipients. But somewhere along the line, the meanings started getting twisted because of dishonest people entering into this stream. And they presented the meaning based on their limited interpretation or in order to befool a large mass of people. And therefore, this chain got broken. Hence, today, I have come again to re-establish this chain by giving this knowledge again to you. Now, in this section, just understand, there are 42 verses in this whole 4th chapter. I have picked up the section first, which is 1st to 5th verse numbers. What happens in this is, if we continuously feel that I can become spiritual on my own, then that myth stands busted in these verses. Newton looked at the apple and apple fell down and there was an observation. So you have an observation and then you have a hypothesis and then you have experiment and then you have a theory. Very standard pattern of, bottom up knowledge. Process of induction. You start from something, you read a pattern and then you say, okay, under certain temperature and pressure conditions, this thing should work like this. This is a basic tenet of modern science. But transcendental knowledge, dear seekers, it comes from top to bottom. So this aspect must be understood very, very clearly. What does this mean? It means that it cannot be comprehended, experimented with, researched into. None of these things work here. It is absolute and it is to be learned. And then by learning, you transform yourself and move. So Krishna says, I gave it to the sun god Vivasvana. So there is sun planet, then there is sun god in that. His name is Vivasvana. You don't tell Bhagavad Gita to a a fusion of hydrogen and helium. You tell Bhagavad Gita to a person, right? So that sun planet has a god, and his name is Vivaswan. And a lonely god, what will that he do? Then he has his subjects also. So we then realize that, oh, all these things are personalities. See, it is easy to laugh at something which which the other person can't prove. You may just, you know, claim it as rubbish and dismiss it. But that doesn't make it wrong. Sun planet has a king. And Krishna is saying, it's the same Krishna who is being selectively followed by some people who say Gita is a great book. We don't follow Krishna selectively, we follow Krishna in entirety. Lesson number 1 for all of us here. He is not saying this scripture is for Hindus or for Indians. Show me one word like that. Because its application is universal, because he says, Aham Bij Pradapita, I am the father of all living entities. Ants, bees, animals, aquatics, vegetables, everything. So this knowledge is universal. And now I'm telling you that there are personalities. And he gave it to the father of the mankind, Manu. What did Manu do? Manu passed it on. Rajar Shayo Vidu, which means the kings. They were Raj Rishis, so they were saintly kings. That's a qualification of a prime minister. He should be a king, but he should be a saintly king. So that transcendental knowledge can be passed on to a large section of people. Then from there on, Ikshvaku onwards, when the disciplic succession was coming down, somewhere some people came into the picture. Who are they? They are like snakes. So milk on its own is a great thing. But if a snake touches it, then it becomes poisonous. Similarly, this divine knowledge on its own is most purifying. But when it is spoken by the mouth of these self-interested, liars, then they create a completely opposite meaning. And this country or even the other countries are full of it. Go to those masses, where in the church, where this fellow just touches somebody and the person shivers and falls down, and then the whole group is falling down and shivering, and in the name of spirituality. Then the other fellow is sitting and he's saying, आपके समोसे में चटनी कम है, आप उसको ज्यादा लीजिए तो आपकी प्रॉब्लम ठीक हो जाएगी. 99% of spiritual or so-called spiritual institutions are bastardized. And as every class has backbenchers, every institution has dishonest people. So instead of carrying the heart on the sleeve, one should have faith in the scriptures. If you can't have faith in multiple scriptures, have faith in Bhagavad Gita. Take its message as sacrosanct. Then you will never be at loss. There is rain outside. Don't complain, why is it raining? You just carry the umbrella of Bhagavad Gita and you will be all right. Why is, if it is a spiritual, why so dishonest? You have to go back by understanding this message. You have to transform yourself. On the way, if you can transform others, nothing like it. If you can't, don't worry. Keep marching ahead. So it got broken because of such dishonest people. And now Krishna is saying, I am re-establishing. Arjun then asks, Sir, you are younger than Sun God, if I understand it correctly. So how do I believe? So then Krishna says, you and I both, we have taken unlimited births. I remember each one of them. You can't remember any of them. So those who say, since we are spirit, so we are the same God. Soul and God are non-different. That's what they claim. Krishna bursts another myth. He says, I can recall everything, you can't. That's a difference between Jiva and Ishvara, soul and super soul. And that difference must be kept in mind that Jiva is a part of super soul, and a part can never be equal to the whole. When you just understand this much, you will never get into this realm of I am Krishna, you are Krishna, we all are Krishna. No, I am fragment of fire, Krishna is fire. I'm a drop of ocean, Krishna is ocean. So qualitatively, Krishna and we are same, but quantitatively we differ. I am like a 0 watt bulb. Take me at 12 noon in front of sun and then compare the two. We both emit light and heat. So quality wise, qualitatively we are same. Quantitatively, of difference. This is a part of transcendental knowledge to understand the distinction between soul and super soul. Never forget it. Qualitatively same. We are Sachidanand. Krishna is also Sachidanand. But Krishna is Sachidanand Ghan. We are Brahman, yes, but Krishna is Parabrahman because he is the source of us. So we can never be Krishna. All right. Arjun inquired. Then Krishna said, why do I appear? And that famous shloka of Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata. Abhyutthanam Adharmasya Tadatmanam Srajamyaham. Don't think that Srajamyaham means that Krishna creates himself. He's already there. He's an absolute reality. He just manifests and unmanifests. Changes don't take place in him. So he says, I take birth millennium after millennium to do two things, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam, in order to punish the miscreants and in order to give happiness to my devotees. But the truth is, he doesn't have to come down to punish a miscreant. So many energies are working for him that any miscreant can die anytime. But Krishna comes because paritranaya sadhunam. He is so fond of his devotees that he comes down to those devotees who are not qualified to go to him. And he stays amongst them. He purifies them. He gives them paritranai, deliver. I'll tell you something which is a little off the topic. But even if you do very nice bhakti, very nice devotional service in this life, then you will take birth in Vrindavan or Mayapur or Jagannath Puri, in one of the places where Krishna has performed his pastimes. When you will do further, your bhakti will advance and your senses would become increasingly more and more controlled, and mind would be controlled, and they will all be absorbed deeply into loving devotional service. Then you will, when you will leave body, you will enter into another planet where Krishna is actually has taken incarnation and performing a pastime in your third birth. There you will go completely berserk because you will actually be living with him. So most of these gopis in Vrindavan were actually the rishis of Dandakaranya. When Lord Ramachandra went past Dandakaranya, when he was sent for in the exile for Kunti, at that time they had a desire to be with the Lord. So Lord Ramachandra said, when I come in Dwapar Yug, at that time I will fulfill your desire. So they took birth as gopis, and then they got further purified. But what happens is when you are actually with the Supreme Personality, whatever little tinge of enjoyment is left in you, even that gets cleared. And then you go back. 100% purification. So, ordinarily, if you do nice devotional service, it may take 3 lifetimes. If you do complete devotional service within one, you can go back because the process is so powerful. So, that's what Paritrana is sadhunam, to deliver the saintly people. That's why he comes. Sambhavami yuge yuge. Every millennium, I do it. Then the Lord, claims, he says, Janma karma chame divyam, yome veti tatvatah, tyaktva deham punarjanma, naiti mameti so Arjuna. My birth and my activities are transcendental, Arjun. Janma karma chame divyam. My birth and my activities are transcendental. Yome veti tatvata, one who knows me like this in essence. Tyaktva deham punarjanma. After leaving this body, next body he doesn't take. Naiti, mameti, he comes to me. So Arjuna, oh Arjun, he comes to me. This is the power of hearing chapter 4. By understanding chapter 4, you can go back to the supreme destination. What does that mean? There is nothing vague here. Very distinctively clear. The supreme destination is where there is no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease. If need be, please write it down. The supreme destination is where there is complete absence of birth, death, old age, and disease. That's the supreme destination, because these are 4 fundamental problems of life. No matter how much any stream, any discipline, philosophy, history, geography, math, science, physics, whatever it is, no matter how much progress you make, you can't touch these 4. They were here, they are here, they will be here. Very clear. So therefore, the perfection of life, the siddhi, param siddhi, is what is the method by which you can get out of this. Dear seekers, that method was given in chapter 3. And that method was sacrifice, perform yajna. Just put your nature upside down. Instead of being the self-centered, enjoy-centered being, just start doing everything for the pleasure of the sum total. And then the sum total will belong to you. So there will be no pressure on you to earn and then enjoy. Then there will be unlimited enjoyment without any earning. When the child leaves the home of the father, then he has to earn and manage. Inside the house, he gets every facility without doing anything. Merely acknowledging the authority of the father frees him or her from so many problems. Don't think, oh, but I would like to work. I would like to be on my own. This false ego is the root cause why all of us are here. So this way, when this conversation happens, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, then Krishna says, what happens when you know that my activities are transcendental? What do we mean? If I say Krishna as a 7-year-old boy picked up a large hill on the tip of his nail of one finger, then you should know he can do it, because he is transcendental. And one who has complete faith that yes, he can do it, that is the person who is eligible to go. Not the one who is performing austerities, observing various types of vratas, very busy in studying all scriptures. He may not go. but this fellow will go. I'll tell you a small story to help you understand. So one day, Narad Muni got an invitation from Lord Vishnu for dinner. So he set off towards Vaikuntha. So he stepped out and was just walking uh, on the earthly planet. And he bumped into a cobbler. So when the cobbler looked at Narada Muni, he became overwhelmed. His eyes, were full of tears. And in choked voice, he said, "O Brahmarishi Narad, I, I must have done some great pious activities in my previous life that I had your darshan. May I ask you, where are you going?" So Narad Muni said, "Yeah, Lord Vishnu invited me for dinner. I'm going there." He says, "What a great fortune. May I request you something?" Narada said, "Yes." He said, "Please, when you go there, ask Lord Vishnu, you know, when will I be delivered?" Narad Muni looked at him and said, "You, Shudra, you are in the fourth order of Varna and not by caste, by activity." And then he said, "Yeah, but I am equal for everyone, so I will ask." Narad Muni moved ahead. He bumped into a first class Brahmin. There was a Janev thread and a tilak and kanthi and everything, dhoti, kurta, tip top. He bowed down, recited certain mantras, but he didn't have tears in his eyes. He said, "My dear Narad Muni, where are you off to?" He said, "I have an invitation. I'm going there to see Lord, have an audience with Lord Vishnu." He said, "Please do ask, when is my time?" Which means when will I get delivered? Narad Muni was wondering, I bumped into two people, they are asking the same question. He reached there, he had nice prasad, and then as he was returning, Narad Muni said, "Lord Vishnu, I have a favor to seek." So Lord Vishnu said, "Yes, by all means." He said, "I bumped into this cobbler and this Brahmana, and they both asked me the same question, that when will they get delivered?" So Lord Vishnu said, "Yeah, what you do is when you go back and you see them, then you tell them, they would ask you, what was I doing in Vaikuntha? And you just tell them that I was making an elephant pass through the hole of a needle." So Narad Muni became wide eyed. He just looked at it. He said, "Come again." He said, "They will ask you what I was doing. And you just tell them that I was making an elephant pass through the hole of a needle." Narad Muni said, "All right." He left. He came across the Brahmin first. The Brahmin bowed down and made an inquiry that, "Did you ask Lord Vishnu?" So Narad Muni was about to respond, and then in between that, he cut Narad Muni and he said, "Okay, first tell me, what was Lord Hari doing?" And they said, "He was making an elephant pass through the hole of a needle." He said, "Narad Muni, please don't joke with me. You can't pass through an elephant through the hole of a needle. It's impossible." So then Narad Muni said, "Now I know the answer. Lord Vishnu has said, Brahmin has a lot of time, and for the cobbler, it's the last life." Narad Muni moved ahead. Cobbler saw him, again became overwhelmed. And when he inquired, "What was my lord doing?" Narad Muni said he was making an elephant pass through the hole of a needle. And there was no end to the joy of the cobbler. He said, "Jai, Jai, only you can do it, my lord. Only you can make an elephant pass through the hole of needle. Who else can do it? It's possible for you to do." That's called Shraddha. That's why Krishna says, "Janma karma chame divya." My activities are transcendental. Yo me vetti tattvata. Vetti means knowing. Tattvata in essence. So Narad Muni said, cobbler is going and Brahman won't. So the qualification is Shraddha. And then what is the result of this qualification? Vita raga bhaya krodha. Veet means without. Three things disappear: rag, attachment; bhay, fear; krodha, anger. This is the result. No matter what's happening around you, you are not afraid because you're situated in the self which cannot be diminished, which cannot be finished. So you're fearless. You are not attached because there is nothing which can impress you having tasted the best. So, how can you get attached here? And because there is nothing that you want that it must happen, so there's no need to get upset about it. Vita, raga, bhaya, krodha. That's what you achieve through this knowledge. So, like this, when Krishna was explaining, and the pace at which I am going, I think I will take 2.5 hours more to even just give a summary of chapter 4. So, I won't do that. I'm just picking up the section. Section 1, he talked about the antiquity of Bhagavad Gita. He talked about the disciplic succession. From verse number 6 onwards, he's talking about his nature and the result of knowing his nature. But today, there is something which is very, very difficult to understand. And in my absence, if you would read it, you would not be able to understand it. So I want to take you through verse number 25 to 32 first, because that is what is to be understood in this chapter. So Abhimanyu Prabhu, if you may kindly pull up Veda base on this screen, then that would help me to sure. I would like to go translation by translation. Just understand the background while he is doing it. See, the thing is, in chapter 3, Krishna talked about sacrifice or performing yajna, which is one and the same thing. In this chapter, he's talking about various types of yajna or sacrifice which you can perform. Sorry. So, verse number 25. So now we are going to, thank you, Prabhu. So now we are going to read the translation and then I will be explaining them because this section is complex and you better read it with me and understand and ask if you have any problem. The background is Krishna says one should perform sacrifice, but how many types of sacrifices can be there? How many types of yajna? Do not mistake yajna with havan. I told last time also, I think. Havan is a one tiny expression of yajna. Yajna is very expansive. So let us begin with verse number 25. Can you just scroll down a little or scroll up? Sorry, up. I'm sorry. Yeah, further, further, further. That's it. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices in them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. So now you can remove it for a while I explain. So we are beginning now. What all type of sacrifices can be there? Krishna is talking about the first two here. You may worship Indra separately. You may have various type of Ashwamedh Yajna and other types of Vajpayee Yajna and Rajasurya Yajna. All these yajnas you can perform. All right, 100 Ashwamedh Yajna you successfully perform and you reach the realm of Indra and you control there. Indra, by the way, is not a person. Indra is a designation. It's like Prime Minister. Then there is a person at the post of Indra. Brahma is also not a name. Brahma is also a title. Then there is a person in the name of Brahma. Which Brahma? So then they say, okay, so sun god, which sun god? Then they say Vivaswan, like that. And in next class, if some of you are curious, then I can share a table of who is the Indra in our time and who is the Brahma of our time and so on, and who is the Manu. We are into the time of Vaivasvat Manu, and who is the sun in our time. That all those details are present, but that's a very tiny thing to know right now. What you should know is people who worship demigods, and they, that is also yagya, because 95% of your Vedic literature is about worshipping demigods. But what is the uh, loss in that? One, you get result, yes, but the result is temporary and less in quantity. So after a while, one, it would exhaust, or you would, the duration would be finished. So the result that you get after performing yagya for demigods is not the best form of yagya, but it is one of the recommended processes. And what it does to you, it removes your sinful reactions. So worshipping of demigods is like moving on a highway road. There is one way of coming and another way of going, and there is a divider in between. So the chances of accident reduce drastically. So you have a vivaha samskar, you lead a regulated life, and therefore you are you don't enter into seeking prostitutes, and thus you may safeguard yourself from AIDS. So those kind of reactions do not approach you because you never initiated it. So similarly, worshipping the demigods, they give you things back for which there is no reaction upon you, but there is reaction in terms of tendencies. But without complicating, if you sacrifice something for demigods and you get something in return, that also is karma yoga, because you are connecting with the higher authority, which is invisible to you. You cannot see them with your physical assets, senses, etc. The second type of people are the people who perform sacrifices in the fire of Brahman. Who are these people? These people say, boss, this place has only troubles. This is a horrible place. One should not live here. So then what do? They sit quiet, they sit tight, they stop reacting, and they do not fall into. I'm so sorry for this. I just seem to have received a call. Can you hear me?
Ji Prabhuji, we can hear you.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Let the thing do. So the people who put sacrifices into the fire of Brahman are the people who say there is all pervading reality who has no form, and I do not want to live here, so I would not do anything. I'll just sit tight, and just by taking my senses away from the objects of the senses, I would merge, mind my word, merge into the Brahman. Brahman means the sum total of everything. So these people, just a second. Yeah, I think that's better. So these people who merge into the impersonal Brahman, which means which cannot be defined, which has no shape. Krishna has a form. Brahman doesn't have a form. Like flower has a form, but fragrance doesn't have a form. Sun has a form, but sunlight doesn't have a form. But only preliminary understanding of sun, is sunlight. Deeper understanding of sun is Vivaswan. Preliminary understanding of flower is fragrance. But deeper understanding is the shape of flower, the softness of the petals, and so on and so forth, and the juice within it. So these people, they simply merge back by sacrificing their own very being. So that's the meaning of this. That's first type of people. Either they worship demigods, get benefits from them, and gradually purify themselves. The second category of people, they stop dealing with the outside world and they merge themselves into the supreme reality. Let's move to the next to understand. Let's move to the next verse to understand. Verse number 26. I'm sorry, but These verses, once you understand, then only chapter 4 would make sense to you. Can you enhance the size one, please?
Sure.
Okay, I can do it on my own, so that's fine. 26. Yeah. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Now you can let it be there. What is happening is, right now, what all of you are doing is a yajna. You are doing Shravana yajna, which means you are performing hearing sacrifice. You could have heard some material sound vibration, some song, some jokes cracking, and so on and so forth. But you chose to not do that and invest your time into understanding the supreme reality. So this is called Shravana Yajna. What I am doing is called Kirtan Yajna. I am repeating. So the unadulterated brahmachari, which means the students at a young age who follow brahmacharya under the supervision of a bona fide guru or spiritual master, what do they do? The hearing process and senses, which means they do not watch a movie, they do not eat more than necessary, particularly all the forbidden items, they do not engage into sex life. So this way they sacrifice the hearing process and the senses, but into what? Into the fire of mental control. Sanyam agnav. Sanyam agnav means, the agnav means fire and sanyam means mental control, which means they also have the desire to engage into sex life. They also have the desire to listen to other types of music, but they perform sanyam, mental control. Whenever you do that, now understand, whenever you do that, there is heat in your body. You want to do something and you don't do something, that's sanyam, control. And to exercise control, the body generates heat because it is not your natural state. That's why it's called tapasya. That's heat is the fire. In that fire of mental control, you give the ahuti, the sacrifice of hearing process and the other senses, not just hearing process. This is who does that? Unadulterated brahmacharis do it, which means all the five senses, on the strength of mental control, they sacrifice. What a beauty. But then there are others who are regulated householders like all of us. They sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. So most of us are married here and not aligned with the recent Supreme Court judgment that even if you are married, you can have, an adulterated lifestyle, that you have the freedom to have affairs. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about regulated householders, which means one wife or one husband. Then what happened? The object of the senses. So skin is sense and object is soft touch, which means sex life. So they distance themselves. So in the fire of the senses, their skin needs soft thing. Their mind is not meditating on it, but their skin needs it, their eyes need it, their ears need it. But because they are regulated householders, they don't do it. Why do they not do it? Because they have some sense enjoyment allowed. You can have kids, you can raise kids, you can have one wife, then all the emotional warmth, etc. That's in a regulated manner, you can do that. The remaining part, they also sacrifice. So they also perform a yajna. Brahmacharis are also performing a yajna. Their varieties are different. We all regulated householders, what we do is we earn money and then we sustain the other three varna ashramas, which means we sustain brahmacharis, we sustain vanaprasthis, and we sustain sannyasis. We feed them. That's why you all have an intrinsic nature of feeding to people. You want to give, because that's the duty of a grahastha. He sacrifices his, this is his yajna. Then Krishna goes a step more. So you are doing it for demigods, that's also yajna. You're doing it for the supreme Brahman, that's also yajna. You're doing it for mental control, that's also yajna. You're doing it for the sense control, that's also yajna. So 4 types of yajnas we have learned so far. Now let's move to the verse number 27. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Beautiful verse. When, don't worry, you will get an explanation. So you do not feel fearful that what all is happening here, what is he talking about? When you get upset and you are angry, then the air in your body is the symptom which indicates that something is wrong. Your nostrils, they widen, they flutter. Then the heart shrinks or expands. If you feel fearful, the sinking feeling. When you are about to see someone who you like, then the expansive feeling. So the 10 types of air in our body is moving inside the body. And the 5 chief airs, you all know, Pran, Apan, Saman, Vayan, Udan. These 5 airs are also there. What does it mean? Dear seekers, thought and air are intrinsically woven together. I repeat, thought and air are intrinsically woven together. So Krishna here recommends Patanjali's yoga system. So what happens? Prana. There is a difference between Shwas and Prana. Shwas means breathing without awareness. Prana means breathing with awareness. Prana is what you take from up. Udan is what you leave from behind. So that prana is one, udan, and what is happening? There is coming in, there's getting out, there is shrinking, there is expanding. All of those airs are there. And then there is a air which causes equilibrium. What does this mean? So you got angry and upset, and your breathing has become fast. And then the contradictory activity is recommended to you. Okay, count till 10. Just focus on numbers 1, 2, 3, and the air becomes normal if you can focus on counting till 10. So you are bringing the air into the equilibrium. So these yogis, what they do is they perform this sacrifice in the sense that they make these 5 airs favorable, so that at the time of death they can pull it up onto the Agnya Chakra here, where mind is, in the middle of the 2 eyebrows. And why is it so? Because then there is no air disturbance happening, there is no thought coming to the mind, and thus the mind is like a serene lake. And the only thought which would come would be the one which intelligence will clear. Okay, you can think this. Such a terrific yogi, he burns the senses and the life breath into the as oblations, swaha. So what is he doing? He's the air which he could have inhaled, exhaled, all of those airs through which he could have enjoyed, dhak dhak karne laga, to, such a cheesy song, but any which ways, to any other song, So all those expressions of expanding, contracting, all of those things, you refused to entertain them, and you made an equilibrium of the air, which means you actually refused to enjoy, and thus you sacrificed into the fire of controlled mind, which was the Agnya Chakra here. So Krishna therefore acknowledges and approves demigod worship. But he says people who are less intelligent will do that because the result you get are temporary and they are less in quantity. So that's one. The second is people who merge into the supreme Brahman. They'll just kill their identity. Then third are the unadulterated brahmachari, hearing process and the other senses into the fire of the controlled mind. Then there are regulated householders who do not touch the object, so therefore deprive the senses from the sense objects and burn it into the fire of the senses itself. Then the fifth type came, where they sacrifice the breathing air and therefore the senses, because the whole moment, the fluttering of the eye, etc., is all the air that is moving in your body. And all of this is happening because of the thought. So that's what it is. Now let's move to the verse number 28. I am continuously apologizing to you because the subject matter is such that I cannot simplify it further. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities by practice of the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Dravya yagya, tapa yagya, yoga yagya, swadhyaya yagya. Dravya yagya means when you give something to a poor, you build hospital, all the welfare schemes, not exactly, but they are somewhat, they are distorted forms of dravya yagya. Your possession, you had earned it, you let it go. That's dravya yagya. Why so? Because people who cannot think or understand things, at least they can give away what they have created, and they also qualify. So that is also yagya. Then there are people who perform yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, and so on and so forth. So they also qualify as yagya doers. And then there are people who keep studying the Vedic literature and they advance in transcendental knowledge the way you all are doing today. So they are also bona fide and approved by Krishna. Let's move to the verse number 29. So this way you understand the varieties. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breathe into the incoming and the incoming breathe into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So there are two types here. The second one is what Jain people do, which is called Santara, in which they stop eating towards the end of their life. So they sacrifice the outgoing breath into itself, which means the outgoing breath leaves the body. It's not suicide, remember. It's done as a part of sacrifice. So it's bona fide process. And those of you who thought pranayam is only for bodily strength, you should know what is Krishna uses the word pranayam parayana. People who are absorbed in pranayam, they come to a stage where there is no breathing taking place. The movement of air itself stops. When the air stops, then the thoughts stop, because air and thought are intrinsically woven together. If air is not there, thought is also not there. When the yogi sits in that trance, then that also qualifies as sacrifice. So now you can understand worshipping demigods, merging into Brahman, hearing process into mind control, or staying away from the object of senses and into the sense control, or the Patanjali system, or Dravya Yagya, or Tapa Yagya, or Swadhyaya Yagya. All these are bona fide. They have been recommended by the Vedic literatures. And all the books in the market that you see, one way or other, they have been stolen from this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Let's move to verse number 30. I'm not keeping a track of time. What the time is it, Abhimanyu Prabhu?
Prabhuji, we are like 1 minute from 11.
Okay, I'll just read the verse number. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. Brahma Sanatanam. They move from this atmosphere to the eternal Brahma, supreme atmosphere, because there is a taste in sacrifice. Sacrifice is not tasteless. Don't think you will be at a disadvantage. When you perform it, then you understand it. Then Krishna goes on to say, "O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifices, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next?" Just go and talk to people who don't, reach out to their parents, who don't share anything with their spouse. They can't live happily because they don't know the idea of sacrifice. More stingy and miser you are, more miserable you are. Though you think that more stingy and miser and more greedy I am, better I am. No. More you share, more you reciprocate, more you sacrifice, better you are. That's it makes business sense to do sacrifice. Last verse. All these different types of sacrifices are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Like there may be people who may give lakhs and crores of rupees or dollars for all religious and spiritual activities, but they can't understand this knowledge. So there is scope for them also. That okay, you can't understand that, no problem. You do this and become qualified, because even that what you have earned has been given into the overall entropy of the system. So you are purified. And last, O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. You can remove this now. So Krishna also says that initially you may do the sacrifice of material possessions. You go and you go to a gurudwara and serve in a langar at a shoe stall, or you go to a temple and do some cleansing activities. You are giving your time, which is your possession. You engage in various services. So that's called Dravya Yajna. But better than Dravya Yajna, Krishna says, by that you understand the relationship between you and me. That's a knowledge, and that's a transcendental knowledge. A lot of section has left. Either we cover the remaining part next time, or I let it go and we move to the chapter 5. I leave it to you. Just let me know in next 1 minute. Would you like me to cover the remaining half next time, or would you be interested in moving to chapter 5?
Can we do a show of hands for the question? Like maybe we can have a thumbs up for people who'd like to cover the remaining part in the next chapter, in the next class itself.
Okay. One question I would take, and then we will call it a day. It is a tough one. Do read it once you are, off and you have some time at your disposal. If you have a question, please ask.
Do we have any live questions at the moment? Please feel free to unmute and ask.
The subject matter is such today that okay.
But if you don't have anything from the audience, Prosi, I did have one question that's been on my mind for the last few classes.
Okay.
When we talk, like today, we also use the word Shraddha as well. So when we say, let's say a mother whose son is sick and she tells herself or she talks, she says, okay, if he gets better, help him, God. If he gets better, I will do this, or maybe I'll offer this at one place, or I'll walk to the temple on every Monday. What are your thoughts on that? Do you consider that as a sacrifice or a selfish ask?
First of all, it's not at all a selfish task. Four types of people go to God: Arthi, Artharthi, Gyani, and Mumuksh. What you are talking about is called Arthi. The good thing about Arthi people, which means people in distress, is that they know who to approach. They are not approaching a demigod, which means they are not, you know, it's like it's like in your locality there is a corporator and an MLA, and then there is an MP, and then there is a, minister, and then there is cabinet minister, and then prime minister, and then president. But when you know the president and you approach the president, then that's the best method to solve your problem. So Krishna says these are very pious souls. At least they know who to talk to. A mother desiring for her son to live more or get cured is and she is asking to whom? She is asking to the Supreme Brahman. Then Krishna will allow it, and then he would help her. But after that, the faith needs to thicken so that she can then understand that, oh, he is the right person, but not to run to him every time, but to understand him, please him, serve him, and then understand that I am temporary right now, everything around me is temporary. So Abhimanyu Prabhu, the answer to your question is she should pray, definitely. And it is not selfish at one level. But once she gets favorable result, then she should strive to know who she is, where she is, why is she suffering, how can she get out of it. That's the real mercy of Krishna. But everyone, each one of us, when you are in distress, if a son is in distress, it's his right to go to the father. Who else will he go to? So you and all, we all go to him. But we don't go to him that, this promotion, so much increment, this, there's a long list that we carry with ourselves. That's where the problem is. Don't perpetuate your greed more and more on the strength of God. That's where selfishness comes into the picture. To keep body and soul together, whatever you need. Last example, and I'll finish. We are nuts or bolts in a large machine. We need grease to survive in that machine. And it's the duty of the machine owner to provide that grease to us. So facilities must be there with us. Why should we starve? We should not starve. Why should we unnecessarily suffer? No. We just know that we are at a wrong place. We are serving you. We want to go back. That's the clarity. Thank you so much, dear audience. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And thanks to all of you. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Abhimanyu Prabhu, for your wonderful question.
Thank you, Prabhu. We'll share the rest summary and the recording in the email. Thank you, everyone.